Well, 6 weeks of election campaigning comes to an end at last on Saturday. Then it's either Labor heartbreak again, but worse, or a big gamble with a new Labor government under a leader who's not on top of the detail or on top of the big picture either. To sum up the 6 weeks behind us and the 3 years ahead of whoever wins, I'm joined by Liberal Senator Holly Hughes and Nicholas Reece, a senior aide to former Labor Prime Minister Julia Gillard and political advisor to two Labor premiers. Well, I got to say, Holly, the poll numbers do look grim for the coalition. Would winning this election take an even bigger miracle now for the Liberals than winning the last one did?
Look, I'm not a big believer and never have been in the national polls when it comes to federal elections, because we do know that every election is fought state by state and seat by seat. And I think the polls have always been tighter when you go down into the individual seats on the ground. I've certainly over the last few weeks, well certainly the last 6 weeks, if not longer, but definitely over the last 2 weeks of pre-poll, been in around a dozen seats. The feeling on the ground is incredibly positive towards the Morrison government. And I think what's most interesting is the number of people who are coming up on pre-polls to thank us for JobKeeper. And it's not just business owners who are saying without JobKeeper, our business would not be able to have remained open. It's actually their employees who are acknowledging that their jobs would not be existent to this day had we not introduced JobKeeper and brought the country through the pandemic so successfully. Now, if you look at what Albanese and the Labor Party have been saying in between gaps...
Oh, no, I've got that. Yeah, look, no, Holly, look, I'm starting to feel that I'm getting now, the pitch for the last 2 days of voting, and that's your job.
You know, Andrew, that's what I've been hearing
Holly
on the
is
ground.
fairly confident.
Mate, I am fairly confident because we've got gaff number 372 today. If we want to talk about what's been going on the last 6 weeks, we've got a guy who doesn't know the cash rate, doesn't know the unemployment rate, doesn't know...
No, I've done all that. I did that at the top of the show, Holly. I think I did it better. Nicholas, what is your feeling? You're going to tell me you're just... Oh, no, you go back home and watch the tape.
I won't... You won't get the talking points from me, Andrew Bolt. It's just straight talk express Reece here. So look, let me begin by agreeing with Holly and saying that this is the most unpredictable election in Australian history. There is an old saying that any Australian federal election is really a by-election in 151 seats, and it has never been more true than in this election, because you've got the electorate splitting into three groups. You've got 30% voting Liberal National, 30% voting Labor, 30% voting for other. And so it's just so hard to predict which way it's going to split in each individual electorate and which way preferences are going to go. So it is so hard to predict. It's so hard. Well, listen, even Holly, somebody like me who's been involved in so many elections.
I am trying to give you a prediction.
I don't know. I'm going through it. I'm going through it, and I do think I'd rather be Labor than Liberal in terms of, who's going to win. But Holly, what has been the best moment, do you think, in this campaign for your side, and the worst? I'm going to ask you both so you can both be honest. Best and worst moments of the election campaign.
Well, I think today was probably a bit of a highlight when you look at what happened with the unemployment rate. That unemployment rate, and I wouldn't like to speak for either of you, but I can tell you the unemployment rate has never been lower in my lifetime. So I'm certainly not 48 plus, and it's 48 years since we've seen an unemployment rate at that level. So that is particularly good news for, I think, the country, let alone the Morrison government, but it is supportive of the economic management that we've had. I do think maybe one of the worst moments, funniest moments, something that happened was actually yesterday when poor Scott fell on top of Luca, who had the best time whilst it was going on. And I heard him this morning being interviewed. He's quite excited by the gear that he's now getting and the $1,000 that's being donated to his club. I do think poor Scott may think that's the worst moment when he nearly took out I don't know how old Luke was, 9-year-old.
Yeah, no, I know that, but I actually thought, on balance, that probably worked out for him, and I'll talk about that later in the show. Nicholas, best and worst moment. I would have thought your heart went in your throat on day one when Albanese couldn't name the unemployment rate, and then it would have done it again today, but it's too late in the campaign for the Liberals, maybe, when he didn't know that the borders had been down for 2 months.
Look, I think Anthony had a bit of a wobbly start to the campaign, but I think we've seen him certainly hit his stride in his campaign very well. And I think Labor has come home very strongly in this critical last week of the campaign in particular. And, there's been a bit of luck come Labor's way as well with the way the issues have flowed. I mean, with inflation rising and real wages stuck in the mire and therefore real wages falling. Labor's been out there with some ideas, some solutions, whereas Scott Morrison has had no solutions. So on that whole cost of living, how do you lift people's real wages? Labor's come home strongly and the Liberals haven't.
The Straight Talk Express, Nicholas Reece.
There's the talking points,
But
Nico.
Holly, I've got to reprimand you, Holly. You were very cruel about that 48-year gag because I have seen unemployment lower, but then I'm substantially older than you.
I've got to get it in there some way, Andrew.
It was good. No, I think that's actually unemployment rate is very, very important. I don't know if it's going to win many votes, but for the health of the country, very important.
Well,
Holly
it's
Hughes, Nicholas Reece, thank you both.
It's important for the economy.
It's important socially, Holly, giving people a job and a sense of purpose. For me,
and guess what?
that's number
Supply and
one.
demand.
Thank you very much to both of you. Nicholas Reece, Holly Hughes. Good on you.
Thanks, Andrew.